Every who down in Who Newville liked the holidays a ton. But where to get great prices on gifts, they had no idea. None. They searched and they searched for great gifts under $25. Gifts for spouses and friends and even their toddlers. When suddenly one who shouted, Walmart has what you want, knowing they have Lego, Tree Hut, and no prices to flaunt. So they enjoy the holiday season as Who's often do. Cheering and shouting, Walmart has incredible gifts. Who knew? Find gifts they'll love under $25 at Walmart.
I'm sitting in a room that has thousands of spy books in it. So, and that's been my life for the last 2 years, has been stuck in this room with all these books and gradually moving them out in piles as I get through them. I'm a 40-odd plus year reader of spy fiction. I started reading spy fiction when people were reading Sherlock Holmes. That was my introduction to fiction.
Welcome to the Spy Masters podcast. I'm your host, Antonia Senior. I'm a writer, I'm an author, and my mission is to bring you all the best writers talking about spies. In this episode, we've got a really special treat. We've got Paul Burke, who is the editor of a new magazine called Aspects of Crime, which focuses on all manner of writing about crime and spies. So Paul is also writing a massive encyclopedia of spy fiction, covering all the great names and all the names you've never heard of. Paul is here with us, and he's going to give us some heads up on the best classics and the best undiscovered writers that you might want to read and put on your Christmas list. So welcome to Spy Masters. Don't forget to like us or follow us wherever you get your podcasts for more great chat about spies. Paul Burke, thank you so much for coming on the Spy Masters podcast.
Delighted to be here. Thank you very much for asking me.
So listen, I'm having you on because you have just started a brand new venture. Now, many of my listeners might know you from your brilliant work on Crime Time, fantastic podcast, and sort of other content around crime fiction.
Thank you.
Now, you are also involved in a sparkling new venture, Aspects of Crime. Tell us about that.
Okay, Aspects of Crime. Well, this is really exciting, actually. It's all just the last couple of months, it's all started to come together. It's an online website and magazine and a podcast. And we do the usual things, the features, the interviews, the reviews, short stories. And the magazine, the first magazine went out in September. And I've seen Khan and Tony Kent talking about Freddie Forsythe. There were various people come on board, but actually I thought it was a really good magazine to get the thing started. And I suppose the unique thing about this is, though, that just to tell you that we have these platforms, and that's sort of our partnership with authors. And we basically provide them with a platform. That means they can carry their articles and they can carry stuff about their social media and so on. And we'll promote new books and we'll talk about interviews and so on. And that's there for a year. And people join us, and that helps us to promote the product generally.
So listen, you your cover star of your first issue, which is jam-packed, is Tony Kent,
Yes.
Frederick Forsythe reimagined. Talk to me about that. Have you read the book? I haven't read the book yet.
I have read the book. So I was very lucky. I got a really early copy of that. And so I did read it. And when I came to do the magazine, I thought, Freddie Forsythe, to be fair, at that time was alive. And I just thought that this would be a great idea if Tony Kent could come on and talk about, this partnership with Freddie Forsythe, how it all came together in the book. Because I'd read the book, and the book is one of those action-packed books that is a proper page-turner, and it really is a fitting sort of follow-on from the Odessa file. It's called The Revenge of Odessa for people who don't know, and it's just come out now. And I thought Tony Kent would be perfect to talk about that. And I've read the book, and it was really good. And it just seemed that if there was going to be a big hit at this time of the year, if there was a blockbuster coming out, this would be the one. And so it was great to get Tony to do that for us.
You are a bit of an expert about spy fiction, aren't you, Paul? Because another of your many hats is you're writing a big encyclopedia. Can you tell me about that?
I am writing a big encyclopedia. I'm just about finished the first draft.
So it's an encyclopedia of spy fiction to be...
The Encyclopedia of Spy Fiction. It's got various other titles. It's one of those things, a little bit odd because it's an encyclopedia, but I've worked it chronologically as well. What I actually wanted to do with this was sort of tell the story of spy fiction in relation to the story of spying in the real world. Because I think it's the two closest kind of that genre and the reality are the two closest things. You pick up any spy book, and I don't care if it's James Bond, you'll find the reality that backs it up.
Mm.
And I went all the way back to 2000 plus BC and started bringing the story forward of real spies and how that all sort of developed. And then slowly bringing fiction in. So you get stories in the Bible, you get poetry, ancient myth, and all those sorts of stories, and bringing it up to the point where you get plays, and then you get the novels. And the first novel is 1821. It's
Is
The
it?
Spy
Is it?
by
Sorry.
James Fenimore Cooper.
Of course. 21. What a heritage. That's like 200 years ago.
200 years, yeah. Funnily enough, there is actually, in the 1930s, was a 100 Years of Spies. There's a collection put together in 1937 by Dennis Wheatley. And that's
Dennis
100
Ridley
years
is
of
the
spy
Horseman
fiction.
Rides Out guy.
Yeah.
Is that him? Yeah.
Yeah, well, and he's better known, of course, now for those horror films and for the horror stories that he wrote, those kind of stuff. But he was writing spy fiction in the 1930s.
So you're collating all these spy stories, all these spy books. How many of them do you think you've actually read? I mean, do you know how many books are in your first draft of your encyclopedia, and how many of them have you
You
read?
know what? At the moment, I don't. I don't know how many authors, and I don't know how many books, but it's thousands. I have. I mean, I'm sitting in a room that has thousands of spy books in it. So, and that's been my life for the last 2 years, has been stuck in this room with all these books and gradually moving them out in piles as I get through them, No, but I'm a 40-odd plus year reader of spy fiction. I started reading spy fiction when people were reading Sherlock Holmes. That was my introduction to fiction, I suppose, in a way, almost.
Yeah. So I always think that the books that we read when we're early teens, the grown-up books we read as early teens, are the ones that kind of form us as readers. Do you have like a kind of early reading experience that you think has sort of dictated this direction that your life has taken book-wise?
Yeah, I suppose. I was always early into Le Carré and Deighton, so it was more that serious side of spy fiction in the first place. It was decades later before I came to James Bond and started reading that side of the genre as well. But yeah, that's the sort of fiction that started me off. And my dad was a big reader, I suppose. That's the point. He was buying all these books. It's one of the reasons I've got so many books is I've still got the stuff he bought in the 1960s and the 70s, which started me off.
That's amazing. So have you got all the old kind of covers and stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
You'll have to see it sometime. It's quite an incredible collection.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I can
I'm
imagine,
literally sitting amongst 5,000 books here. That's.
I can imagine that quite a lot of the 70s covers probably wouldn't pass muster.
There is a lot of lurid stuff, and it doesn't matter what the subject is. For some of them, there's got to be a girl wearing a skimpy bra and big boobs, that kind of thing. There's plenty of that. Yeah.
Amazing. So we're going to talk in a little minute about your favourite spy books. I set you a challenge to think through what your favourite spy books are.
Which is really difficult when you've got thousands of books, running around in your mind, sort of thing.
I know. I feel like I've asked you to choose your favourite child. It's harsh.
It feels that way.
But just before I do that, I would just urge people to go out and have a look at Aspects of Crime, especially if they're remotely interested in crime fiction, definitely, but spy fiction, because there's so much spy stuff in there. It's amazing.
There is, because of course, as you pointed out, there was Tony Kent in the first issue, but also I've just actually the last podcast was with Vasim Khan, and Vasim Khan's just done Quantum of Menace, which is Q.
Yes, absolutely. I need to get him on, actually. I need to go begging to his publicist, Vasim Khan, to talk about Q. Did you? And it's a great book.
It is. It's a very good book. What I would say for spy readers is that it's not a spy book per se. It's very much a crime story, because Q's been retired from the service. He's been kicked out, essentially, redundant. And his friend is murdered, and he investigates his friend's murder. But, the way I looked at it was that he's sort of thinking, well, I'm not a detective. What do I do? And he sort of thinks, well, what would James Bond do? And I don't mean that in a flippant way, but, how would James Bond investigate something? And so he gets into the case. And his friend is James Bond, and James Bond appears in the novel, which is, I don't know if that's the first time that's happened in one of the series novels, where James Bond isn't the central character. But he's brought him in, and there's a lot of fun in this book.
As a Bond fan, do you think Basim managed to capture the essence of Bond?
Yeah, I mean, there's short bits, with Bond,
Yeah.
but I do think it's his Bond, but I got the character, yeah, for sure. I think the thing about Q is he's done that. He's turned him into a very real sort of person. He's got a grumpy old father, he meets an old girlfriend, and he's got that issue to deal with while he's solving this murder. And the murder makes him a proper scientist because it's about quantum mechanics, which he
Yeah.
has to also explain in the book. And I'm not going to do that for you now if you can ask me. Just to say that what Vasim Khan said was that if you think AI is revolutionary, it's nothing compared to what quantum mechanics will do to the world of science.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is one of a thing I think about when I wake up in the morning is quantum computing, but not on this podcast. Right. Paul Burke, 3 books.
Yes.
I set you the challenge. So the first book was classic spy novel. Your favourite classic spy novel?
Classic spy novel. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I was thinking about this, and I thought also what I don't want to do is go the same route as everybody else. I love the classics, so my favorites are The Spy Who Came In From the Cold and books like that. But there's one that I read recently because I'm reading books again, and for after many years. Some of them pass muster, and some of them don't. And I'll talk about the one that didn't after we finish this. But the classic for me is Charlie Muffin by Brian Fremantle.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
You've completely foxed me. Everybody always says a Carré, and I'm like, okay, Charlie Muffin. Tell us about Charlie Muffin.
All right, then, Charlie Muffin. Charlie Muffin, I mean, there's no doubt that Fremantle is influenced by Le Carré and Deighton, but adds his own little flair to it as well. Charlie Muffin is a shabby working class spy. I mean, he's in the office at one point taking off his shabby hush puppies and his wet socks and putting them on the radiator. So he's not, everybody's favorite in the office. But the thing about Charlie is that he doesn't fit. There's a new regime, and it's actually old school military. And they really hate the fact that Charlie is this working class lad who doesn't like to obey rules. But the problem they've got is that Charlie just pulled off the biggest coup in catching a big Russian spy. They still want to get rid of him, however. And he's stuck in East Germany. And he realizes when he's trying to cross back that it's a danger. So he doesn't. And he finds his own way through instead of going the route that they've set out for him. And that makes them more suspicious of Charlie. So when he's back, he does this interview with the Russian spy. And they think it's a bad interview. They think he's got nothing out of it. So they decide to sack him. But by the time they've decided to sack him and Charlie's explained what he actually got out of the interview, which is an awful lot more than they thought, they realize they have to reinstate him. So now Charlie's a bit miffed. So they put him on the next operation. And the next operation is a Soviet general who's decided he wants to defect. And they put Charlie on this operation. And he's being watched by the CIA and MI6 because they all want him to make a mistake and cock it up. So I won't tell you what actually happens. But in the process of this, there's a lot more going on. And Charlie manages to screw everybody. Literally everybody in the process. And I suppose the point about the tale is it is about the morality of spying. He's not a likable character, but he's a character who's getting one over on the system. And you can't help but like him for being the guy, who's getting one over on the system.
He sounds a bit Jackson Lamish.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a line there, I think it's almost like Deighton. Then the comedy's ramped up, the working class roots, the tensions are all ramped up, and it gets that way. Yeah. So I think, it's a natural progression. I think there's another writer, maybe shouldn't get too distracted by other things. But, there's a lot about the hypocrisy. And one of the things is that this is not a light novel in the sense that the complexity of the plot is as good as you find in Le Carré and Deighton. It's just that there's an awful lot more humor. And in the end, it turned into a series. I think there are probably 15, 16 of these novels in the end. Now, you don't get the same quality across the whole series, of course. But as the first one, I think this was brilliant.
That sounds completely amazing and new to me. I'm excited. I'm going to seek out Charlie Muffin.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton, stay, oh, Hilton, stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
Tell me about the classic that didn't pass muster when you came back.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Of course, so I was reading these, because this was written in 1977, by the way, that one, and David Hemmings did a film in 79. So yeah, I was going back, and one of my earliest memories is a book called Otley by an author called Martin Waddell. And again, it's a film. Tom Courtenay did the film, actually, and the film stands up better than the book does, because at least there's this view of London that's quite authentic. Anyway, Otley is this small-time antiques dealer. He's sort of grubbling on the sides of the issue. And he's at a party one night and he pinches a trinket from a home. And what he doesn't realize is that there's a recording device in it, and it's actually got a British traitor talking to an organization. And so all of a sudden, he's the most wanted man. And at the start of it, people think he's this professional criminal. They think he's a professional spy. And of course, he's a bumbling idiot, and how he survives is just pure chance. But then he manages to get a spy on his side. Anyway, you get a lot of double cross and you get a lot of triple cross. And it was a funny novel. I remember it fondly because, as I said, as a teenager, I grew up with this novel. When I reread it, it's just not very funny, and it's nasty, and it's very, very dated. And it was just sad in a way, because I had this memory of this, and I'd enjoyed the film too. And it just means that, that's destroyed for me in a sense, and I can't really talk nicely about it. It does fit really neatly into one category, though, that's really interesting when you're talking about spy fiction. And that's that when the James Bond came out, obviously James Bond was a super success. People didn't really try to compete with Bond. This is quite clever, actually. What they did was they parodied or spoofed Bond. And this is that kind of spoof. So instead of a professional spy who's very clever, you've got an idiot who bumbles around and stumbles his way through it, and somehow the answer comes out right in the end. And it fits into that category, but I'm afraid I couldn't recommend it to anybody.
Oh, that's really... Oh, bless him. I hope he's not listening, the author. He's probably long gone. In your vast and encyclopedic knowledge of all the spy fiction of the past, there must be so many names that were once massively, resonant and are now long forgotten and nobody's ever heard of. That's an extraordinary... it feels almost kind of sad, like you're kind of, it's the graveyard where old writers go who didn't quite last into posterity.
Yeah, it's funny, and sometimes it's not easy to tell why they didn't. Alan Williams is a fine writer who was very popular in the 70s, and into the 80s, and almost forgotten now. And Anthony Price is maybe the most remarkable. Anthony Price, who wrote the Dr. David Audley series, is a fantastic writer, and his books were some of the best coming out through the 70s and 80s in the Cold War. And when the war came down, he didn't write anymore. I think he retired. He was the editor of an Oxford newspaper as well. But anyway, he retired, and those books have largely been forgotten, and it's occasional reprint now. But I would put those books, I would stack them with the Deighton's and Le Carrés and all the ones that we do remember from that period as among my top reads at the time. Yeah, for certain.
So the second challenge I set you was, there's a kind of renaissance of spy fiction right now. There's some brilliant writers doing some really great stuff. I feel a bit odd now talking about them, because now I feel sad that some of them are going to end up forgotten, like the ones that we just talked about.
Well, we don't know which ones, so none of them have particular reason to feel sad.
No, exactly. Okay, so let's just assume they're all going to last into posterity. Now, which one would you definitely want posterity to remember? Who do you think is really killing it right now?
All right, yeah, that's a good question. Because, over time you get to see these writers grow as well, All right, I think, can I mention a few names? Of recent people who've written books.
And then I
told you I was going to break the rules, didn't I? But of the recent writers, I can think of David Goodman, David McCluskey, Ilana Berry, Charles Cummings, Paul Viddich, Peter Tonkin, who writes historical fiction. I've just got into his stuff and I love it. But you've got Alex Gurlis and Mel Nygate. And And from a more muscular side, Brad Taylor, who I think is a military man or was a military man and brings fantastic detail to what are, as I said, muscular sort of spy thrillers, but very good. James Grady, Dan Fesperman, Joseph Cannon, and I've been lucky enough to talk to all these people as well, by the way, the vast majority of them anyway. And I think, interestingly, I wonder with David McCloskey, who's written 3 novels now. Third one, The Persian, will be out in the UK very shortly. It's just out in America. And he manages to write differently every time. He manages to not just change subject, but seem to change style as well. And I think he's really growing as a writer. He can be action and exciting on the page, and he can be very intellectual and very much in the style of, Le Carré and so on. And I just think that there's a possibility he might produce some really special books in the coming years. So that's
I haven't read his new one yet. I will very shortly. I'm excited. Yeah, I thought Damascus Station was great. I thought Moscow X was better. I loved it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, and the thing about Moscow X, of course, was that with the Damascus Station, that was his bailiwick. He was a CIA analyst and he was involved in Syria and so on. When it came to Moscow X, it was different because it was something it wasn't his field, but he made it something that was very, very clever modern thriller, because also a lot of writers tend to be a little bit afraid of modern technology and things because, for instance, the stuff you have at the airports, the surveillance equipment and things means it's very difficult to just fake an identity these days. So writers have to be clever in how they think about these things, and he's thinking about all those things.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's a wider point. So technology is really problematic for spy writers, and I can see why lots of them decide to kind of write a bit more historically.
Yeah.
Because actually a lot of modern spying is, dudes sat in front of computer screens in different rooms from each other, which might make great espionage, but it makes terrible narrative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeopardy. There's some 18-year-old in Minsk who is alternatively looking at porn and sending out disinformation. It doesn't make for great spy novels.
Does it? I tell you what was a great spy novel, though, the one that I did pick in the end. I went for Merle Nygate.
Yeah.
I love her creation of Eli Amiram, this London station Mossad chief. And it was the second novel, really, I suppose, because in the first novel you get a lot of establishing characters, don't you? And this one is the righteous spy. And basically he's had a knockback. He's not in everybody's good books. So Ellie decides to set up his own scheme, and he tampers with drones which are due to go to Russia. And it came out just before this thing happened, if you remember the Hezbollah incident with the pages. So boy, did she hit the zeitgeist with that. But that's just one of the aspects of it. So I won't say too much about the plot, but it is about compromise. I mean, there's an issue here with his wife, and it's about this personal story and how much he's prepared to compromise his personal life to do his job. And she gets that sense of the morality, and it works with another character too, because one of his staff is also working on a young journalist. And the same thing happens, how far do you go in manipulating somebody in order to get what you want? And she's very good on that, looking at the morality of the personal side of it and then loyalties and the patriotism and those kind of loyalties. And I thought that was a really brilliant book.
Yeah, I hear you. I think Merle Nygate's books are absolutely fantastic. That all the best spy novels work because they play with the fact that spying is inherently about lying. And if you're lying professionally, how does that spill over into how you conduct your personal life? And those are the best ones that explore that kind of grey and murky territory, and Merle does it brilliantly. And as you say, I couldn't believe it when I must have read, I think I read her book after the pages, and then I was like looking to check when she'd
got the idea, or when
she got the idea, and she basically preempted it. It's like, that's incredible, and to come up with that as an imaginative feat. and she says, because I've asked her about it, like, you know, she wasn't getting inside information from Mossad about what kind of operations they were doing. They didn't tell Mel Nygate they were going to take out the Hezbollah pages so that she could put it in a spy novel. But it was just incredible feat of imagination to create that scenario, I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope Mossad took it the same way as well. Didn't look at the book and say, hey, where did she get this from?
Yeah. Well,
you wouldn't want them on your tail, would you?
You would not want them on your tail.
Mm.
And then finally, I mean, we've slightly covered this, but I don't know if there's a separate person we're going to talk about. But I asked you also to think about undiscovered gems. Who do you think people should be reading and they aren't reading?
Okay. There's one, again, it's what you dig up, but there's a series, there's 3 books by a guy called Francis Bennett, who was in publishing, and he wrote them, I think it's 1998 to 2001. Making Enemies is the first one. That's a story about Andropov setting up a mission and setting a honey trap and trying to pull the wool over the West's eyes. The second one is the one that interested me the most. It's set in Hungary, and it's set in 1956. So you've got spies, and at the same time, you've got the ordinary people and the revolution going on around them, you know. And that was fascinating because you don't see that picture very often. And there's a third book called Dr. Berlin, which is set in Berlin, but it's also about the nuclear arms race. So that's a trilogy. The book I did really want to talk about, though, was by a guy called Arnaldo Correa. And this one is unusual because it was only published in the United States. And I don't even know how I found it, but I'm so glad I did. It was published in 2002 by Akashic, and he is one of the great Cuban crime writers. But he's written this book called Spy's Fate, and it's set post-Cold War, and it's about the U.S.-Cuba relations. And this spy, Carlos Manuel, is sent to Florida, Miami, where the Cuban exiles are, because one of their agents is believed to be an American double. So he gets there, and now he's dealing with the CIA, and he's dealing with the Cuban exiles, and he's dealing with his own paranoid government. So the situation he's facing is that his government thinks he's going to defect, the CIA think he's a killer, and he's on the run from everybody, essentially, which makes him reassess where he is. But what's really fascinating about this is it's told from that Cuban perspective. And we're so familiar with, there are people who've written about Cuba. Paul Burke has written about Cuba, for instance. But to actually have a Cuban spy written about by a Cuban is really fascinating. And it's a good book, so I'd urge people to have a look at that one if they can.
That sounds completely amazing. It is going to take me literally half an hour to do the show notes and put all these books in there, but I will.
Sorry.
Do it, because I think that you've just pointed the listeners to a whole kind of treasure trove of happy reading.
I'm chalking off the other ones I had written down, by the way.
Yeah. Paul, mate, stop.
Okay.
No, if there's any others that you want to share, do, because your encyclopedia knowledge is just unbelievable.
Okay, one more.
Go on then, one more.
A little bit. This one is Alan Judd, who's written a lot of modern spy fiction, but it's called A Fine Madness, and it's about Christopher Marlowe.
It's a wonderful book. I love that book.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? Because I've really thought that at the end of it, I got a sense of the man. And, it's Marlowe's been written about a lot because we know he's a spy, but we don't know an awful lot about what kind of spy he was. We don't have a lot of detail about that. So it's ripe for speculation. Of course, he was murdered in a pub as well, an inn. So that's all ripe for speculation. But I really thought that this was almost like a biography of a man when he going back over it and actually going through how he became a spy and what happened, And I think that's a brilliant book.
Yeah, I agree. That is an absolutely fantastic book. And I'm also quite relieved, Paul, that by the end of this, there's at least one that I've really read. I'm thinking you should be doing my job. I just spent so much time reading non-fiction that my back catalogue of fiction that you've just awakened my eyes to is not what it should be.
To make you feel better, I haven't got round to Tim Viner's book about this new book about the CIA, and there's other books that I need to get to that I can't because I'm stuck in the middle of all the fiction. So, it works the other way too.
It does work the other way. The Tim Viner's new book is brilliant. I highly recommend it.
Right.
Mission. Absolutely brilliant. Listen, on that note, where I feel relieved that my credentials have been burnished right at the end because I've read Tim Reiner's book on the CIA, I'm going to say, Paul Burke, thank you so much for coming on the Spy Masters podcast.
Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow, tweet, spread the word so that we can keep bringing you more brilliant writers talking about spies. Don't miss an episode of the Spy Masters podcast.